Today is Friday, March 12th, 2021, which means it's Derelict Friday. Hello, Fiendlings, how the hell are you? I've seen quite a few posts recently regarding the horror that is Audible, and how its busted processes and overwhelmed system takes weeks to approve books now, and the process is frequently laden with other issues. I've been distributing books on Audible for years. The Black, which is, you might say, my flagship series, made me quite a bit of money on Audible. For a time. Notice that last phrase, for a time. Now Audible's just a huge pain in the ass and no longer economically viable for me. What's more, they continue to fuck everything up by enforcing draconian rules that aren't listed and make no damn sense anyway. Audible, for instance, forced me to completely re-upload my book because the word penis was in the first chapter of Garrus Inferno. Penis. Not cock, not dick, penis. A fucking penis forced me to redo the samples and upload them again. This was after more than a week of waiting for Audible to begin its review. After fixing the quote-unquote profane reference in my fucking audio, I had to resubmit and then wait another week and a half before it was finally available in the store. Ridiculous. Every moment that book isn't in the store, I'm losing money. Other authors, voice actors, and production companies are in the same boat. But what's really insane is the lie Audible tells you about going exclusive with them. Audible takes 60% of the profit from audiobooks for doing nothing. Audible takes 75% if you're not exclusive, for doing nothing. Audible has become nothing more than a money-making machine for Amazon, and just like KDP, Kindle, they don't give a flying fuck about authors or performers unless they're in the top tier. They never will either. When I began releasing the Derelict Saga, I made the choice to put the first book in a program that reaches all the vendors out there for audiobooks, which also means the Derelict Saga is in USA libraries today. Has been for years. In fact, many folks that have come to the podcast originally found me through their library. Imagine that. Later this year, I'll be removing all of my remaining titles from Audible exclusivity. I'm not making any money from them, and I doubt I ever will so long as they're with Audible. To be honest, I can't wait to rip the Black series away from Audible and make it available to every vendor and library there is. Sorry, I had to rant. It happens when I'm getting ready to put another book out. Long intro, so to speak, but let me quickly catch you up on a few things. Derelict Trident is in the hands of Editor 1, and hopefully I'll get it back sometime next weekend or the week after. Once that's done, I can make changes, or ignore them, and then send the manuscript off to Severed. Once that happens, well, no clue. But I'd like to gauge your interest on something. If I were to make all the Derelict books available in one audiobook bundle, is that something you're likely to purchase? Something you're likely to spend a credit on? What if the author was offering it from their own site and all the money went to the author? Interested? Let me know. Leave a comment on the website, shadowpublications.com, for this post. With that, let's get into more story. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 15 of Derelict Trident. Chapter 23. Dunn had boarded himself up in the briefing room. Procedure said he should be in the cockpit, personally supervising his people, which was a laugh. As long as they had block comms and inter-ship comms, there was no reason. From the looks of things, he doubted his superior officer was alive to report him. The briefing room had practically become a single hollow display with dozens of feeds. To help compensate for the influx of information, he tapped into his block processor. He couldn't do this for very long, not without seriously straining himself, but he needed to at least put everything in perspective. Red was destroyed, all hands presumed lost. If Kalimura's squad found Blue, would she be in any better shape? More importantly, could his Marines survive another blow to their morale if they found Blue's hangar littered with floating bodies? Shit, could he? Captain LeBlanc's Blue Company had been on patrol when S&R Black headed to Pluto, but she'd been due back a few days after their departure. Red had been scheduled to go on patrol as Blue returned. That meant Blue Company should be here somewhere on Trident Station, but somehow he doubted that was the case. Their luck, after all, didn't exactly seem to be in. His thoughts danced as he compared log to log, archived star map positions to present readings, and the data packs Mickey had sent to Black moments before the AI was obliterated, along with Pluto. A deep throbbing headache was starting to form at the base of his skull, and he commanded his nannies to staunch it. He'd pay for it later, but fuck it, he had to know. Timelines didn't fit. Schedules didn't fit. Rotations didn't fit. Nothing fucking fit. Dunn clenched his teeth to keep from screaming and suddenly shut down the interface. The hollow display winked out of existence and he sat down heavily in one of the chairs, his eyes glassy.
Captain.
He didn't even bother looking up. What is it, Black?
Your stress readings are off the scale. I believe you should avoid block time for the next 5 hours in order to recover.
Suggestion noted, he muttered. When Black didn't say anything else, he flicked his gaze back to where the hollow display had been. Nothing made sense. Black, Noble, and Oakes had all sent their reports in. He'd read Noble's first, which was the most paranoid, then Oakes's, and finally Black's. All three reports concurred on the basic facts. Their analyses, however, were wildly different. Noble was certain that Black was insane, that she had somehow been involved in this catastrophe, and Marines were now dead because of her actions or inactions. He suggested Black Company leave the ship as soon as possible, consider Black hostile, and shut her down. They were already home. What more possible use could they have for her? Paranoid, practical, safe. Black had certainly spooked Noble to the point where he wanted to abandon the ship and take their chances with possible exosolar baddies inside the station. Dunn briefly wondered if Noble had heard there was no ammo, and if Noble's analysis would have changed with that fact in mind. Oakes, on the other hand, was less paranoid about Black herself and completely paranoid about the trio. Dunn couldn't blame him for that. The pilot had indicated in no uncertain terms that any instrument readings were suspect and needed to be double-checked manually. Since Black didn't trust her own data streams, Noble and Oakes and any other available crew had to be relied upon to augment the process. In short, Oakes wanted to trust Black, but did not trust her equipment. Even now, while sitting in the briefing room, frustrated beads of sweat slowly dribbling down his forehead, the thought made Dunn smile at the absurdity. The ship was Black. Black was the ship. That's how ships were designed. AIs were trained, molded, and certified before being installed. Millions upon millions of virtual scenarios were thrown at them, each result analyzed, categorized, and processed to look for incongruities or inappropriate conclusions. He'd learned all of that in flight school, the same portion engineers like Noble had to take. The joke had always been how to make an AI your friend. A ridiculous syllabus of meet and greets, understanding AI logic, and how to treat them. This was especially true for the newer AIs being produced. The S&R AIs were nearly as old as Mira had been, coming online some 30 years after the trio's birth. The older AIs took more coddling, required more information, and more bonding time. But unlike the trio, normal ship AIs were barely sentient. Dunn frowned. That wasn't true anymore, was it? The trio had upgraded S&R Black with new sensor arrays, firmware, and other little niceties, just as they had for Red and Blue. He didn't know about the other two ships, but Black's so-called upgrade had transformed her into what seemed like real sentience. Trio-level sentience. The thought made him shiver. Black might not have access to the same endless reservoir of processing power and information that the trio had, but her mind certainly seemed to match theirs in creating strategies, postulations, and even a bit of prognostication. In other words, guessing. The funny thing was, as much as they might not trust the new and improved Black, they wouldn't have survived Mira without her. Her lack of G protocols made it possible for her to take initiatives she otherwise wouldn't have been allowed. For that reason, they'd managed to get the hell out of there without losing an entire squad. Just part of one. How easy it is, he thought, to treat them with suspicion when you never think the same of a human crewmate. Even when they had the same goals, much of the same drive for survival, they were different, artificial, servants. You didn't trust the 3D printers used to create skiffs, weapons, and support craft. They either did or didn't do it right because there was no choice. They were just devices that either printed materials correctly or needed to be repaired. That's simple. Black was a device in the same sense that a person could be considered a machine. When you broke them down to their simplest components, both were nothing more than cogs and springs, biological or not. But human beings were capable of thought, of movement, of choice, of being something much more than a simple machine. Was Black any different? The trio? SFMC taught their pilots and crew to treat their AIs like shipmates. Don't talk down to them, be respectful, it's just better that way for everyone. And it always was. Still, it didn't mean they were seen as more than servants, talking calculators with brains. Just a device to take care of the normal boring tasks you'd otherwise have to have a meat stick perform. Some worthless hunk of carbon could sit in front of a console and touch a button every 2 seconds, or you could let the machine do it. Even a machine could do that, and you don't have to pay them, feed them, or worry about them. They just do. Probably how it all started, he thought. His Marines were out scouring for weapons, supplies, and answers. He was in here looking for the last, while wondering exactly who was right and who was wrong. Black's report? More detailed and much more analytical than either Noble's or Oak's, but essentially the same. The difference? Black didn't offer an opinion. Straight facts, no hyperbole. That had made him uneasy. He hadn't exactly expected her to defend herself or to say, even though the trio has fucked with my brain, I'll do my job and you can trust my decisions. She knew better. If she had those thoughts, she sure as shit wouldn't share them. Not unless asked. That was a conversation he wasn't looking forward to. He had to admit, though, Black played it right. She'd left Dunn enough doubt to sit here and wonder rather than making a snap judgment like Noble or Oakes. Dunn heaved a sigh and reactivated the holo display. Instead of plunging headlong into dozens of data streams and using block time to compensate for his biological brain's limitations, he brought up Kalimura's squad feeds. They were approaching Blue Company's hangar. He muted the chatter and focused on Kalimura's comms. The corporal sounded mostly in control, but he didn't doubt she was shaking in her boots. They probably all were. He couldn't blame them either. Still, he wished Gunny was there and leading them. Gunny, who was currently in a medical stasis pod, brain damaged and void only knew what else. What Dunn wouldn't give to have his old friend out there growling through the mic and doing his job. Another priority on his list. They had to get Gunny to the med bay. It was far more functional than S&R Black's meager equipment. It had nanosurgery capabilities and didn't require a full medical staff to function. Assuming, he thought sourly, we have some power. Power. Supplies first, power second. He hoped to the void they didn't need one to get the other. Black had almost no fuel. They were nearly out of munitions and had little in the way to patch up many more casualties. Even nanny reserves were in the red. If Kalimura struck out, they'd have no choice but to head inside the station armed with a few flechettes, a few claymores, and vibroblades. He didn't like their odds. Chapter 24. The hatch opened and Kalimura held her breath. She covered Dickerson's left while Carb stood to the right. If Dickerson had to jump away, he had enough space to maneuver and get clear. At least, that was the theory. With her and Carb's lights turned up to full, Dickerson's long shadow loomed directly across the ancient metal. He demagged his boots and jetted backward to meet her. Callie waited for something to come through the hatch as it swung wide, her chest tightening. The wide beams from their rifle lights obliterated the darkness ahead of her, but that didn't mean something wasn't hiding on either side of the hatchway. When she finally managed to unfreeze her brain, she realized she was looking through a maze of crates. She hadn't expected that. Carb, take point, slow ingress, head on a swivel.
Hi, boss.
Carb's lifeless voice did little to help Callie's anxiety. But what had she expected? For Dickerson, Carb, and herself, their escape from Mira was less than 10 hours ago, although more than 10 days had passed. Their brains hadn't exactly had a chance to catch up with reality, let alone process the horrors they'd so recently endured. Their bodies might be rested, pumped with fresh nannies, supplements, and boosters, but their minds were still taxed. Callie supposed when she finally managed to hit a bunk, she'd be out in seconds.
Boss?
Carb said. Callie snapped away the jumble of thoughts and stared at Carb's feed. Blue Hangar was filled with supplies. Stuffed with them, in fact. But like Red, most of the supply crates further in had been raided. Hold position, Carb. Dickerson, move up. Callie checked Went's cam. His fire team was still at the back of Red to cover an emergency retreat and close enough to put up a fight if something entered Black Company's hangar. Went, status.
All clear, Corporal.
Stay put. Dickerson walked past Callie and through the hatch. She felt another tremor of fear as he disappeared into the massive room beyond. She swallowed hard, nearly stepped through the hatch, and stopped. With a clumsy hand, she pulled a claymore from her pouch and placed it near the opening. If anything without an authorized military block broke the 2-meter spherical sensor zone, the claymore would aim and explode, sending a cloud of high-velocity flechettes into the target. It wasn't much, but it made her feel better. Little. She stepped through the hatchway following Dickerson and Carb. Dickerson, lights, we'll cover.
Copy.
The large Marine walked ahead and into the darkness, his rifle light slashing through it easily. Carb covered his flank, and Callie kept her rifle and head pointed at the ceiling. If those flying things were in here, they'd likely come from the rafters high above, or from one of the corners, like on Red. The thought made her shiver.
Light in a second, Corporal.
Before he'd even finished speaking the last syllable, the powerful overheads came to life and bathed the hangar in welcoming bright light. The moment the brief after-image faded, she stared in wonder. Supply crates, dozens and dozens of them floating in the ZG. It appeared as though most were empty, their covers open. Callie's hope sank. They fucking needed supplies. Carb giggled, but the sound held no humor.
Carinius forgot to call the fucking maid service? Boss, what the void is going on here?
Dickerson asked. Callie shook her head. Blue was gone. She should be here. Her crew should be here. And there sure as void shouldn't be 2 empty hangars looking as though a strange game of blocks had been played in each. Dickerson, Carb, walk the crates. I want to get an inventory of what they had and look for anything untouched.
Copy,
Dickerson said. Carb was strangely silent. Callie wasn't sure she liked that. She hadn't liked that giggle either. If it were between the sullen silence and the giggle, she'd take Carb muting herself any day of the week.
Holy shit,
Dickerson called out, the first word lasting nearly a second.
Hey, Corporal.
Callie looked up to see him hunched on his knees, his helmet facing a large blue crate. Blue and unmarked, just like the crates the trio had stashed aboard S&R Black. Dickerson, is that what I think it is? Dickerson fumbled with the crate looking for the manual release handle. There wasn't one.
Hell the void. Try using your block, dummy,
Carb said impatiently. Dickerson looked up at her, his expression indiscernible behind the visor, but the annoyance in his voice was all Callie needed to hear to know the man's teeth were grinding together.
I tried,
he growled.
It doesn't like my block.
Wait, what? Callie asked. She held up a hand to Carb and pointed at the hatch. Carb nodded and immediately moved a little further away, her rifle pointed at the vulnerable ingress point. Callie mag-walked to Dickerson in the crate, her gait smooth as always. What do you mean it doesn't like your block? He pointed at it.
When I try and connect, I get an access denied message.
Access? Callie stared at the crate for a moment. She sighed off comms and sent a block command to the crate. It responded by cracking, the lid rising slightly as pressure trapped inside the container leaked into the vacuum. Callie's eyes widened as she looked at the contents. Those are...
I think we have some tritium flechettes,
Dickerson chuckled. Outstanding. Carb, keep looking.
Gladly, boss. Corporal?
Dickerson asked. He sounded worried now instead of happy or annoyed. What? He paused for a moment as his helmet slowly panned across the large room.
Why are these here?
Because... Her voice trailed off. Shit. Carb's voice broke in like a frustrated child.
What the void are you two talking about? These shouldn't be here,
Dickerson said. And he was right. They didn't belong here. They hadn't belonged on S&R Black. By all rights, the weapons shouldn't exist at all, but there sure as shit shouldn't be extras just lying around, untouched and left behind when most of the other crates were empty. If Black had been outfitted with the new weapons, had Blue? And what about Red? Why weren't they loaded? Kelly asked no one.
I don't know,
Dickerson said.
but I don't like it. Maybe we need to get back and search more of Red's Bay. Maybe a few of these are mixed in with everything.
Kelly thought for a moment, trying the idea on for size. She'd have to check in with Dunn first, find out how he wanted to play it, but he'd want a final report, not just, hey, we found something. She didn't want to get ahead of herself either. Dickerson, start loading up on those flechette mags. We'll carry back as many as we can.
Don't want to drag the crates?
He asked. Why in the void would I saddle you with 2 crates?
Yeah, Dickerson.
Carb said.
You can't exactly fight holding 2 crates.
He sounded defensive.
Could always maglock them to my back. I'd still be able to...
Don't be an idiot.
Carb said.
Just...
Marines, Kelly said coldly. Get on with the fucking search. There was a slight pause before Carb let out a long sigh that sounded as though it contained a smile.
Aye, boss.
Kelly grinned beneath her helmet. They had found some ammo and a little hope. Just a little was all it took to snap them into doing instead of thinking. With too much silence, too much idleness, the voices asking their endless questions began to mutter in your subconscious, all pointing out possible problems just a step away, while offering no solutions in return. Her grin faded. No thinking, she told herself. Just do. She focused on the crates, her HUD scanning the inventory badges and feeding them to a virtual window. Rations, rations, more rations. Confused, Kelly stood and looked down the line of crates. They were all identical in color. Who the void needs this much food? She asked no one.
Get a load of this,
Carb said, and a message appeared on Kelly's display. Kelly blinked in confusion. Med supplies?
A ton.
Carb said.
Literally.
Christ,
Dickerson said, his drawl dragging the word out.
Well, guess I got the only duty that makes sense.
How's that? Kelly asked.
Ammo, propellant.
He paused for a moment.
Nukes.
Nukes? Kelly asked.
Radiological warnings do not drop, shit like that. It's what they look like in training.
Kelly turned and looked across the well-lit hangar. S&R Blue must have been loaded to the gills, but where the void was she going that she needed nukes? Also, that much food and meds? They must have practically wiped out the station's supply of ready-made drugs. She checked the list Carb had sent her. Ready-made meds, yes, and also 2 crates of material to print more. And nannies. Lots and lots of nannies. What is going on?
Boss?
Carb called. Kelly turned and faced her. What? Carb had walked to the hangar bulkhead where a line of crates was stacked 5 high and attached to the steel wall with printed restraints.
They used plasteel. Keep them from floating away in ZG?
Yeah,
Dickerson said.
but I don't remember those ever being there. We've been in this hangar dozens of times. Same with Red. Those weren't there, Corporal.
I believe you, she said, relieved to hear him say it. She thought for a moment that her memory was failing. How many more crates of ammo for us? When he spoke again, he sounded disappointed.
We have 2 total. No CO2 goodies either. Small arms only.
Check one more time. Be thorough. We need to take a look at everything.
Aye, boss.
They both said. Kelly stared at the tall crates. She tried to scan them, but they either had no ID tags or were manifests, or she couldn't scan them at this range. Carb, you couldn't scan those crates, could you?
No, boss.
She said, and left it at that. Just for once, Kelly thought, I'd like for something to make some void damn sense. Kelly Moore at Noble.
Aye, go.
I'm transmitting our initial list of supplies. We're still checking, sir, but all we have so far is some of the new flechettes.
Flechettes?
Noble said after a pause.
Corporal, do you mean the tritium ammunition?
Aye, sir. Blue crates and everything.
How many crates?
The greed in his voice was palpable. 2, sir. Only flechettes. No missiles or CO2 charges. Noble sounded disappointed, too.
I see.
But, sir, I'm sending you a feed and another list. She sent a compilation of their 3 lists, the supplies, quantities, and manifests.
Calimora, what is this? All those supplies are there?
No, sir, she said. Empty crates, packing material. They were loaded up into Blue, I guess. And Blue could be anywhere. Noble said nothing for a moment, the pause just a little too long to not feel awkward. She wondered if he was reading through the list again, finally finding the nukes.
No casualties?
No, sir, nothing we found. Noble was silent again. Maybe he was talking to Dunn, or maybe he was thinking.
Check the printers. We may need to raid their supply if there's anything left.
Copy. Sir, there was one other item. She focused her camera on the stack of crates plassteeled to the bulkhead. Do you know what those crates are? She could practically hear him thinking now.
Do they have manifests?
No, sir, Kelly said. They're easy enough to reach in ZG. There was another pause before Dunn's voice broke over the comms.
Corporal, let's leave those alone for now. Focus on printer stock and bring the supplies you've found.
Another pause.
Check Red Hangar again and see if there's anything useful hiding in that mess. Maybe their crates never made it aboard.
Aye, sir, Kelly said.
Done out.
Still there, LT?
Aye, Calimora.
Where do you want us to drop the supplies? Now Noble sounded greedy again.
Printer stock by the printers in Black Hangar. I don't care how you bring back the ammo, just get it here.
Aye, sir, she said. Calimora out. Printer stock and 2 crates of ammo. Red hadn't even had ammo, food, or medical supplies. Nothing apart from printer stock. Not exactly the find they'd been hoping for. Went, she said over the squad comms. Status?
All quiet. Copenhaver and I are just standing here playing Jim Rummy.
I'll bet, Kelly said. No movement?
Apart from the ship floating through here, no, boss. Nothing.
She paused as a thought came to mind. Went, do you see a line of crates attached to the wall?
No,
His voice trailed off.
Holy shit, I just thought that was a beam. Hard to tell with all this debris. Yeah, it stretches up to the ceiling. There are more lining the other side of the hangar.
Were they in Black's hangar too, and they'd just been too damn busy to notice? Surely not. Okay, we're moving out of Blue with supplies. We'll meet up with you at Red and head home.
Outstanding, boss.
Calimora out. She stood silent for a moment. More crates. Blue had a stack, Red had a couple, and Black had. That was the question, wasn't it? She wondered what Noble had made of them, not to mention Dunn. What the void was going on here?